Hello, I'm Piero. Greetings, Mr. Cropper and fellow participants. I'm very excited at the prospect of Mr. Cropper, Mr. Cropper, uh, going through Zarathustra. And I've seen the first, but not the subsequent 8 or so that were up as of last night. I haven't checked right now to see how many are up. Now, an associate Earl, Earl is not the associate's name, but rather their location, subdued my excitement somewhat when I was listening to Mr. Cropper's video several times and trying to figure out how to download it so that I could excerpt parts and have an efficient kind of response. I still haven't figured out exactly how I want to do that. There's going to be so many minutes of this, and I want to reduce the number of times I have to go through it in order to make a reply. But really, this associate Earl does not get the beautiful irony of objectivism, of an objectivist, a somber-voiced objectivist, reading philosophical fiction written by Nietzsche in the voice of, intentionally in the voice of the Bible. What's not to like about that? But regardless, it's an opportunity for me because I've just finished Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged. And in the course of that book, this becomes clear that she is playing with some Nietzschean themes. And it's promising a giant exclamation point in a place where previously there was a giant question mark in my mind about this peculiar crossroads of philosophy called objectivism. And the Nietzschean themes, so Atlas Shrugged is 1,074,000 pages long, and the first 750,000 pages, it's not clear. She's applying a life-affirmation philosophy, but it's not clear necessarily. It could have been really any life-affirming philosophy, including, one of perhaps Rand's creation. But in the last 250,000 pages, it became more and more clear that no, she is applying this rhetoric from Nietzschean philosophy. And really, I think what we could say is that Rand had a philosophy of her own. Let's call that capital realism, just to give it a name. And she joined that with Nietzsche's life-affirming advice. So, in brief, Nietzsche's view there is, first of all, he views philosophy as about living, about ways of life. Okay, and this is an ancient view. The ancient philosophers in the West actually also, according to the skeptics, were seeking ways to have peace of mind and philosophies that would help you live a good life. And in the end, anyway, philosophy is about ways of living. Thus, you can ask what a man's philosophy is, even if he doesn't express or profess to have a particular philosophy. You can find the philosophy of an animal through its behavior. In other words, just through watching how something lives, you can see what their way of life is, and that way of life, if put into a statement, is going to be a philosophy of living. If you make a distinction between thinking and feeling, which I don't, right? To me, thinking is just those are kinds of feelings, and thinking is about combining feelings and whatnot. But for first order, for those that make a distinction between thinking and feeling, philosophy thus is not about ways of thinking, because you can have a philosophy that says, don't think, act on your instincts, use the force. Okay, so then if philosophies are all really about living, then they all have a common question that can be put to them, that we can use to compare those philosophies. And the question is life worth living? And it's related to the question of suicide. Shall you end your life? But it is actually a separate question, and the irony and strange problem in mankind, and a lot of the problems, according to Nietzsche, that we have in society, come from the fact that there are people who say life is not worth living, but they go on living anyway. And in fact, they are in control of our system. Now, the main target of his criticism here is various Christian churches, because he was criticizing their advocacy of inhibitions, and he saw those as life negating, this urge to criticize human nature and advise inhibitions perpetually into the future. So so this is the irony of life here that we have people that say life isn't worth living, but they not only go on living, but they try to tell us all how to live. And Nietzsche's point is that, well, they're not going to tell us any good way because they don't believe there is a good way. Ayn, what Ayn does is she tries to, and this is so simplistic, in order to borrow from Nietzsche's wind that filled Nietzsche's sails, she is associating the industrialists with life-affirming people, and the communists and socialists, who are a collaboration of looters and moochers, we could call them loochers, represent those that deny life. And I think that's simplistic because I think Nietzsche's philosophy is much more individualistic than that. You know, a Christian can live in a life-affirming way, even if Christianity is somehow a life-denying philosophy, because the will to live and express this personal will to power that was part of Nietzsche's philosophy is an individual thing. And if somebody has it very strong, but is, say, raised a Christian, or for whatever reason takes a liking to Christian rhetoric, they'll turn Christianity as a philosophy system upside down if they need to, in order to live a strong life through it. So it's much more individualistic. There is no philosophy with which itself, just by virtue of believing in it, makes you a life affirmer. Okay, and so that's sort of a cheap trick. To her credit, she didn't try to throw Nietzsche's name around and try to, you know, strengthen her ideas with his name. She just used her understanding of the ideas, and I do appreciate that a lot. And there are grains of truth in her work because of this, because you know, there are some of the situations she sets up in that book, you know, characters that, yes, are life-denying characters that are doing this Nietzschean process of hating life and living pretty much as parasites on those that love life. But anyway, so I didn't really know what to say about that book or what would be worthwhile. These Nietzschean themes are interesting, but hard to get into. So yes, I appreciate very much, Mr. Cropper, you going through a work of Nietzsche's. So I can see what Nietzsche looks like to an objectivist's perspective, from an objectivist's point of view. And so I'm going to try to do that. There's obviously a lot of minutes of video there, and I don't know how to do that efficiently, so we'll have to see. But I do find it very interesting, because I think this is finally answering for me some confusion as to where the strengths of Rand's philosophy really lie, and how she arrived at these particular positions. And I think basically she took her personal romantic view of the world and industrialists and capitalism, romantic view, and she wed it to Nietzsche's view of life. And the question is, okay, fine, so that's, you know, she's in a boat, she's in a ship, and Nietzsche's in a ship, and Nietzsche's sails are full and blowing Nietzsche along, and she wants to get some of that wind. And the question really is, that has to be answered then, is, you know, does the wind blow in her direction? Does the Nietzschean wind blow in her direction? And I think if we look closely, we'll find that no, it doesn't, but it still does her philosophy some good, because it's good to be clear about affirming the value of living life. Whatever philosophy you endeavor to create, it's good to incorporate that as one of the requirements you place upon yourself and it. So, cheers.